I believe you have in your board packet the presentation that I'll be going over today. You don't stand before the board very often, so I just thought I'd go a little bit through our program and just kind of give you some background and give you a sense of what we do and why we're here once a year to receive board approval of our grants. So, our program, the Inactive Mine program, AML program, it's also known as, we address hazards and environmental problems throughout the state. Legacy sites or inactive sites, and those are defined as sites that operated prior to 1977. That's typically what we term inactive sites. Part of the work that we do is we address coal mine fires throughout the state. That's one of our biggest issues and one of our biggest ongoing concerns. Most of these are located in western Colorado. You can see some sites here. This is one we're currently working on up at Wise Hill and Craig area, trying to extinguish one of these fires. So that's a big portion of the work that we do and that we try and accomplish with our OSM grants that we're asking approval for today. Additionally, we work on coal mine subsidence abatement. This has been an ongoing concern in areas like Colorado Springs, Boulder County. We've had some issues down in and around Walsenburg and Trinidad also with respect to coal mine subsidence and impacts to local communities related to that. So that's a big portion of the work that we also do. You can see some of the photos there. I believe those are from the Lafayette, Louisville area, where we had a subsidence open up in one of the streets there. We also do non-coal safety closure work. These are our hard rock closure projects, safety mitigation or hazard mitigation. You can see one of the back rates that we install. That was installed just outside of Salida, an area that's accessed by the public. We also do hazardous structure abatement. That's the Independence head frame shaft that you see there that's tilting. And then we do additional closure work, and that's concrete panel installation on the photo on the right there. Another big portion of our project, it doesn't really pertain to the OSM grant that we apply for each year, but we also complete water quality improvement projects throughout the state. It's been a big push lately. This really involves doing mine waste reclamation and stream channelization, those type of efforts to improve water quality in streams surrounding those sites. And then we also complete bond forfeiture mine reclamation projects. So these are sites that are forfeited by the board and then handed off to the MLRB program to complete reclamation. And so we take those forfeited bond funds and then implement the reclamation plan as originally approved by the board. So that's the Sherman mine site, and you can see the reclamation that was conducted there. It involved some building demolition and removal and then regrading of the existing waste pile. So this is just kind of a snapshot of the work that we accomplished last fiscal year. Just kind of gives you a rundown of the types of projects, the total dollar amounts spent, and then the number of features safeguarded. Just like to highlight the fact that about $5.4 million, that's construction dollars, so those are not staff. That's all dollars going back into the local economy to accomplish reclamation. And it's a pretty significant feat in terms of completion of 300 safeguarded projects and then nearly 100 actual procurements through the state procurement process to accomplish that work. So pretty significant, and that's typically that's been about our average, is about 300 safeguarded features each year, and the dollar amounts vary in terms of what we spent on the various categories there, but you can see quite a bit of the money went into coal reclamation, and most of that was coal fire mitigation work. It's pretty expensive work. So AML activities, I just wanted to kind of highlight the funding components. We're only dealing with one aspect of the funding that our program receives, and that's really our OSM grant today, but I just thought I'd highlight some of the other funding sources that we receive to accomplish that work that I just showed on the previous slide. So the majority of our Office of Surface Mining annual grant goes to program administration, also to coal reclamation projects, recognizing that those funds are generated from coal production. So we try and emphasize coal reclamation. Those surface mining grants also go to hard rock hazardous mine opening reclamation throughout the state. We also have partnerships with federal agencies, including the Forest Service, the BLM. We also work with, or trying to set up a new agreement with the Department of Energy to accomplish some inventory work, but we utilize their funds to complete hard rock closures throughout the state also in conjunction with our OSM funds. So a lot of times we will use our OSM funds to leverage additional federal dollars through partnerships to complete work on federally managed lands. We also have partnerships with the US EPA and then our partner agency, the Department of Health, to accomplish those water quality improvement projects that I showed earlier. And then additionally, we can leverage those federal dollars that we receive from Forest Service and BLM to help cost share on projects with CDPHE and other agencies. And then we use severance tax dollars to assist with our hard rock closure program. And then also use those severance tax dollars to work on hard rock water quality improvement projects. And also providing some of those severance tax dollars as match for local watershed groups to apply for 319 grants that then we will assist with in terms of technical advice and sometimes actually completing that construction for those local watershed groups. And then using some severance tax to complete bond forfeiture projects, and then also using those bond forfeiture funds to complete those. So that's just kind of an overview of the various funding elements that go into all of those categories that I showed earlier. So just kind of give you a snapshot in terms of our OSM grant, where we were, where we're headed. Some of this is obviously speculative in terms of beyond this year, because that could change. But just kind of based on where we have been in the past, I think Bruce in his previous iterations here kind of talked about the pig and the python element. And that's really where you see the increased funding that we had following the 2006 reauthorization, where OSM had held some funds and then paid those funds back to the state. It's a pretty significant challenge for our program. We did ramp up staffing to accomplish that. And then recognizing that we were going to have attrition in our staff and that that funding would decrease. And so we've been able to kind of solve that funding increase and increase in staff through attrition and not backfilling those positions. And so now we're back to roughly base level funding. I put the minimum program funding level over there highlighted on the left, and that's per SMACRA. Each state is at least guaranteed $3 million. That $3 million is prior to Congress takes some money out of that, or what is that term? Sequestration, sorry. So that's when we don't end up with the full $3 million this year. Some of that was sequestered by Congress. And so we get $2.8 million this year. We can expect to receive that minimum level of funding at least through SMACRA sunset in 2021. Following that, there's an AML trust fund that Colorado would be eligible to receive funding from until that's paid out. And that would go through about 2025 is when we expect to receive the final grant, unless action is taken on SMACRA for reauthorization of fee collection. So it just gives you kind of a snapshot of where the program has been, where we are currently, and where we're headed from a funding standpoint.
I have a question before you
certainly, Mr. Chair.
In our packet, this is a $2.8 million grant, and does that refer to the first paragraph on the second sheet? Is that what that grant is?
Okay.
That's the funding hearing. I believe is that the description of the different funding sources that
It's Colorado Inactive Mine Reclamation Program funding.
correct.
the sheet.
And then for the OSM, that does refer to that particular type of funding. That's correct.
So that's just that top paragraph. Is
2.8 is only
Yes.
that top paragraph. That's correct.
And so the rest of this is what makes up the 5 million total?
Yes, you are correct. Right, and kind of the slide that I had all those arrows going back and forth, that's those other paragraphs on that page there.
And this is money from the federal government?
The
OSM.
OSM grant is, yes, that's through the Office of Surface Mining.
2.8 million.
Yes.
And so what's the board's responsibility?
As part of our approved reclamation plan, it is written that the board is that we require board approval to submit our construction and administration grant that we receive from OSM. We need your approval to submit that to OSM to receive those grant funds. And that's just part of our original reclamation plan that was put together in 1980.
So it takes about $1.5 million worth of administrative costs to administer $3.5 million worth of projects. Is that a fair way to say it?
Roughly, I mean, that varies depending on the year, but roughly that's the case. Yes.
Thank you.
Sure. And I can go through the specific projects. This is the board's pleasure. If you would like to see all those individual projects, recognizing we have a little bit of time today, I can certainly do that. Just highlight here. I mean, like I mentioned before, the total grant, just overview wise, is about 2.8 million. And that does include a coal-fired design and abatement project, high priority coal and non-coal safety closures, and then stabilization of 2 hazardous structures. And then we have quite a bit of cost share from BLM, Forest Service, been working with Boulder County, and then some private landowners. And so I can go through those individual projects if you'd like to see them. Completely up to you or board's pleasure. So.
I wouldn't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay,
Briefly.
I'd be happy to. That's fine. So one of the things that we do have is we have what's called an advisory council that we meet 2 times a year. This is made up of various members of kind of the industry, the public, and agencies that we work with to provide some feedback on the projects that we propose. And these are the criteria that we request that they evaluate those projects based on. And so you can kind of see that includes quite a bit in terms of the actual hazard, where those are located. We try and propose projects that are relatively well distributed throughout the state, recognizing that those hazards are not all focused just here on the Front Range, but that we have hazards kind of throughout the state related to mining. And so these are the criteria that we request our advisory council to evaluate those projects based on. And then they rank those projects for us. And then based on the level of funding that we receive, we take their ranking into consideration for our final grant that you have before you today. So this is just a map of the overview of the location of those projects. And as you can see, they're pretty well distributed throughout the state. Most of the coal fire work is obviously on the west slope, kind of on the Grand Hogback, where we have quite a few of those fires burning, and then up in the Craig area. Just kind of a brief snapshot of our coal projects by county. And then one of the big efforts that we try and complete every 5 years is a statewide mine fire evaluation to determine the status of our current coal mine fires. I believe we have about 33 active coal mine fires throughout the state on abandoned mine lands. And so one of the projects that we have proposed this year is to redo our evaluation of those coal fires to determine the status so that we can thereby plan additional reclamation projects into the future related to those. It does say 34, it's been 33 or 34, it depends. Some of those are in a differing degrees of activity. We also have kind of a placeholder for coal mine emergency projects within the state. These crop up occasionally throughout the year. I think we have maybe one, well, 2 to 3. We just completed one down in Walsenburg. These are subsidence events usually that are either impacting some type of public access, roadway, or public utilities. The one we just completed down in Walsenburg was impacting a city sewer system. So we have about $5,000 in this, just more as a placeholder each year so that we have somewhere to fill in if we need it from an emergency standpoint. Hogback coal fire investigation and mitigation. This really will encompass a number of different fires in terms of investigation and then coming up with mitigation techniques. You can see they're located in a number of different counties, kind of throughout western Colorado. It's about a $500,000 project, and this covers the cost to do contracting for the investigation and then some mitigation, design and then some mitigation as part of that project. This is one of the openings on the Southfields coal mine project. It's about 7 coal openings down in Huerfano and Los Animas counties. And we're anticipating a cost of about $5,000. So these are pretty hazardous features just located outside of town, pretty accessible. West Cypress Coal Refuse Reclamation Project. This is a project located just on the edge of Trinidad Lake State Park. And that coal waste is eroding down into the lake area. And so as part of this project, we're going to do some stabilization, recontouring, and hopefully establish some long-term vegetation to reduce the erosion on site. Kind of see the large erosion gully there on the left photo. So that's just a quick summary of our coal reclamation projects. It's about $700,000 of construction on coal reclamation. And then we have a number of non-coal SMACRA funded hard rock hazards throughout the state projects that we're going to be working on. You can kind of see the distribution county-wise there. Aladdin's Lamp project is located in Gilpin County. It includes 54 total features, 7 adits, and 47 vertical features. We've done quite a bit of work in Gilpin County, obviously recognizing that we have quite a bit of public access throughout that area. So we have a lot of public coming in potential contact with a lot of these hazardous features. So that project's about $145,000 to complete. We're going to be utilizing both SMACRA and severance tax dollars for that. Cinnamon Pass project, if anybody's been down in that Alpine Loop area down in southern Colorado, that gets a significant amount of off-highway vehicle traffic and quite a bit of visitation on Cinnamon Pass. So we have a number of features that are relatively close to that Cinnamon Pass area that we're going to be working on in this project. 23 total features. We have quite a bit of BLM cost share, recognizing that a lot of the property down there is BLM managed lands. We have a good partnership with the local BLM office to provide funding and then to accomplish the project management and construction for those projects. So we have $100,000 for that project, $40,000 of which is BLM cost share funds. Cold Springs Mine Closure Project. This is located in Boulder County. We've been doing a pretty significant effort to address hazards in Boulder County following the 4-mile fire that occurred up there that exposed quite a few features that we didn't necessarily know about before. And so we had kind of an easy way to address those now because there weren't the trees in the way to figure out where those features were. And then also Boulder County Open Space has been purchasing quite a bit of property up in that area. And so they've really wanted to work closely with us to coordinate on closure and then provide some funding to accomplish closure on properties in which they're setting aside as open space. Recognize they're putting in a bunch of trails in this area, and so they're going to be bringing people to this area. And so trying to address as many of those physical hazards as we can has been a kind of an emphasis for our program. And we've had, I think, 4 or 5 various projects over the last 3 years kind of in that area and actually have one currently going on. And this project, I believe, is one of the last projects that will address that 4-mile burn area from back in 2012, I think it was. So $60,000 project with about 20,000 or 20 hazardous features. Lake Como project, San Juan County. We have 27 total features, 19 adits, and then 8 vertical openings. You can see in the photo on the lower left, quite a bit of public visitation. Those people are standing on the waste pile. And so, you know, in areas that you wouldn't expect to find the public, we find quite a bit of evidence of visitation. And so it's really been an emphasis for us down in San Juan County to try and address these issues, considering that tourism is such a big industry for that area. So that's have a pretty significant BLM contribution in that project, also recognizing they have quite a bit of land that they manage down in that area. Lee Hill project, another one of our projects in 4-mile burn area, Boulder County. It's 40 hazardous features. Once again, we're getting quite a bit of cost share contribution from both BLM and Boulder County Open Space on that project for a total cost of $120,000. Lookout project, these are uranium features out in San Miguel County. We've been kind of doing a pretty good effort to try and address a lot of those features, recognizing once again, these are visited sites, very hazardous features. I mean, you can see in the photo there, the brows of both of these entries are very unstable. And so doing whatever we can to prevent public from coming in contact with those locations has been an emphasis. We are working with BLM out there, and a significant part of this project is BLM funded, recognizing that most of those lands out there in that uranium country are BLM managed lands. So we have $100,000 of the total of $120 for that project. The malt project in Park County, a little bit of a smaller project, just 13 features for an estimated cost of $20,000. You can see the water-filled shaft there on the bottom right. Once again, even though these are kind of off the beaten path to some degree, we have found visitation at all these locations. New Dominion project, kind of another smaller project, just 4 features, 3 openings, and then 1 hazardous structure demolition. This one has a pretty significant Forest Service contribution. It is Forest Service property that we're going to be working on, and I think they're providing the majority of the funding for that hazardous structure demolition. So about a $75,000 project. Ruby project in Pitkin County, 11 features, total cost of $55,000. This one we're providing quite a bit of severance tax to match our OSM dollars on this project. And then our San Juan's project, once again, quite a bit of emphasis on that Alpine Loop area down in San Juan County. On this project, we have some BLM cost share, not quite as much because there weren't as many features on BLM land on that project, but a total cost of $175,000. A lot of these features, it is a project with 28 individual features. Cost is a little bit higher just based on the access. A little bit more difficult to get to some of these features. We may have to use helicopter to get material to the sites to accomplish those closures. So that reflects the cost. And then finally, our Wellsville, I think this is the last one, our Wellsville Taylor Gulch project. This is located along US 50, just to the east of Salida. These are some pretty huge limestone mines along the highway there. You can see that's actually a hiking club that sent us a picture of themselves inside the portal. And so obviously heavily visited location once again. We have some other photos of our project manager standing down at one of the lower adits, taking a photo of somebody at that upper feature down in that lower right photo, looking down at them from an upper stope. And so very hazardous features, huge. So that reflects that large cost for just 6 features. These are enormous limestone stopes. So the total non-coal projects, 1.1 million in non-coal funding, and that also reflects our cost share. So that's not just the SMACRA component. So that is quite a bit of that 1.1 million is in BLM, Forest Service, and Boulder County funds, and severance tax dollars also. So there's just kind of a quick snapshot of projects and funding summary. As I mentioned before, roughly we do about 300 hazardous closures a year. We will end up with about 270 this year, so roughly the same as we've done in the past. And then our total cost on the grant proposed is 1.8 million. And you can kind of see the spread there in terms of SMACRA funds versus severance tax and contribution from partners. So, and that's all we have for our grant. So I would just request board action for approval of our 36th Annual Office of Surface Mining Reclamation Grant. And if you have any further questions, feel free to ask.
Go ahead.
It's not, my question isn't pertinent to your request, but who administers the bonds that this board forfeits through the DRMS Minerals Program? Is that your office?
It's kind of shared responsibilities between Tony Shops on the Minerals Program and then our office. We really act as the contractor for the Minerals Program to implement the work. In terms of administration, the majority of that, I believe, is handled in Minerals Program in terms of distribution of the funds.
Is that where the accounting is as far as the amount a bond was on a specific site versus the actual reclamation cost? Who keeps track of that?
Minerals does. The Minerals Program does.
Okay.
So it is reconciled through their program.
So actually, none of your administrative costs involve that. Or so, I guess there's some piece of it.
There's some piece of it. I mean, it doesn't come out of the grant that we're talking about today, our Office of Surface Mining grant. Those admin funds come out of our severance tax dollars that we receive. So there is some administration portion that our staff does do from a project management standpoint, and then visiting those sites and determining what portion of the reclamation plan remains to be completed on those forfeited sites and coming up with a plan to do that, the bidding for those projects and acquisition of a contractor to complete the construction. So there is some administration portion that is handled through our program, but not through this grant.
Okay.
So,
Karen, did you have a question?
No, very clear.
I just wanted to thank you for putting the presentation together, and I know that you have to come to us and have us approve it, but it's important work, and it's good to be reminded that
Okay.
your work out there doing that. And I spent a lot of time trying to get out and see a lot of things, and been trying to teach my kids not to go near them and walk into them. But I just wanted to thank you for.
you're very welcome.
Well, I move that we approve the Colorado Enacted Mineland Reclamation Program 2017 OSM Abandoned Mineland Grant.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, enforcement hearing, Kevin Lawrence, file number P-2009-010. Kevin Lawrence, Nighthawk Mining and Minerals. Michelle Ramirez.
Good morning. I'm Michelle Ramirez. I'm the program assistant. Excuse me for the Deer and Nest Mineral section. I represent the division.
You swear it.
It's on now.
Excuse me, Michelle, do you promise to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
And Tony, there's nobody here for the operator.
Okay. This is a formal public hearing for Sarah Rose permit number P 2009-010. This matter is being brought to the board for confirmation of finding the board's determination that the financial warranty should be forfeited. The chronology has been provided that was presented at the February 9, 2017 Mineland Reclamation Board, as well as what's being presented today. And since the April 14th due date for the board packets, several additional documents have been added and are listed in the presentation. Excuse me. Today, the division requests that the board forgive the civil penalties. The division further requests that the board take the following action pursuant to CRS 34-32-118, parens 3, parens A, parens Roman numeral 3, and parens B, confirm the board's determination that the financial warranty should be forfeited for permit P 2009-010. It's a cash bond of $2,000. There is no history of prior violations, and the legal basis for forfeiture of the financial warranty and the required notifications is provided in the presentation. And if there are any questions, entertain those.
I heard you say you're recommending that forgiving the civil
The
penalty.
civil penalties.
Okay.
Reason for that is the cost record.
That makes sense. Okay, then I move that the board forgive the civil penalties and find that pursuant to CRS 34-32-118-3A, Roman numeral 3 and B, confirm that the financial warranty should be forfeited for P-2009-10.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you. Next item is enforcement hearing. File P-2014-022. Total EMP USA Oil Shale LLC. All those who are going to testify, stand. You promise to tell the truth? Thanks.
Karen, could you put your mute when you're not speaking?
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Good morning. My name is Scotty Tate. I am a minerals administrator, and I'm representing a division in this matter. This hearing is in regards to the Preyes exploration project, NOI P-2014-022, whose commodity is oil shale, operating on 2.41 permitted acres located in Rio Blanco County. This matter is being brought to the board for consideration of violation, civil penalty, cease and desist, corrective actions, permit revocation, and finding the financial warranty subject to forfeiture for failure to submit the 2016 annual report and the 2016 annual map. The chronology is included in the presentation forms which I passed out to you. As of today, the Preyes Exploration Project's 2016 annual report and annual map have not been submitted. At this time, it is the staff's recommendation that the board finds violation of CRS 34-32-116, parent 4, and Rule 5.6 for failure to submit the 2016 annual report and map, which was due on March 2nd, 2016. We also recommend that the board issue a cease and desist order prohibiting all prospecting activities for NOI file P-2014-022 until the prospector has complied with the corrective actions to the divisions and the board's satisfaction. And also within 10 days of the effective date of this board order, submit the delinquent annual report and map, which was originally due on March 2nd, 2016. Any person who violates any provision of a permit issued under CRS 34-32-101 et sec shall be subject to a civil penalty of not less than $100 per day, nor more than $1,000 per day for each day during which such violation occurs. In this matter, the board may issue a civil penalty of $4,400 to $44,000 for 44 days of violation at $100 to $1,000 per day. The number of days of violation is calculated from March 24th, 2017. In this matter, the staff recommends the board issue a civil penalty in the amount of $4,400 with all but $1,000 forgiven if the operator complies with the board order. Payment of civil penalties are due within 30 days of the date of the signed board order. The signed board order is mailed unless otherwise specified by the board order. Where corrective actions are not completed by the board ordered correction date stated in the board order, the suspended civil penalties are due in full within 30 days of the deadline for the board ordered corrective actions. Thank you.
Any questions?
I have a point of clarification just before we make a motion on this one. I believe the proper citation is to 32.5 throughout to 32. Is that right, Tony? Is this a hard rock or a construction materials? Okay, 'cause there's 32.5 early on. I just wasn't sure which one. So, 32. So they're right throughout. It's just wrong in the beginning. So Scotty was correct.
Pardon me for that.
No worries.
Sorry, which one is it? 32 or 32.5?
It's 32.
So is it 30, is it,
You can make
Citation
motions
correct?
as they appear on the recommendation. Those are correct. I noticed in the first paragraph under chronology, there was 32.5 cited, and I wasn't sure if oil shale is a hard rock or a construction material. So that threw me off.
Oil shale is hard rock.
I'll make a motion, I guess. Are we to that point, Chair?
Yes.
I move that we find a violation of CRS 34-32-116, parent 4, and Rule 5.6 for failure to submit the 2016 annual report and map due March 2nd, 2016. Move that we issue a cease and desist order prohibiting all prospecting activities for NOI file P-2014-022 until the prospector has complied with corrective actions to the board's satisfaction and the divisions and board satisfactions. Within 10 days, from the effective date of this board order, submit the delinquent annual report and map, which was originally due March 2nd, 2016. Move that we request a civil penalty in the amount of $4,400 with all but $1,000 forgiven if the operator complies with the board order.
Second.
So do we handle the revocation and termination separately?
Mr. Chair, if the board finds a violation, then we can further request that they complete the revocation once that is determined.
So we don't act on reservation termination now? I mean, after this motion today?
Yes, we do. So we
Okay.
first need to find a violation.
Okay.
Once a violation is found, we can request revocation.
Okay.
But that will be at a subsequent hearing?
The revocation will be today, the forfeiture will be a subsequent. We're asking for violation first. The board finds a violation, we'll ask them for revocation and find it more subject to forfeiture. If the board agrees to that, we will then notice the warrantor and bring it back for final revocation or final forfeiture.
So we have a motion on the staff recommendations and civil penalty. Any questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Now we'll consider the revocation.
I move that pursuant to CRS 34-32-124, parent 6, parent A, revoke permit P-2014-022, and pursuant to CRS 34-32-118, parent 1, B, C, parent B, parent C, find the following financial warranty subject to forfeiture or permit P-2014-022 be a corporate security in the amount of $52,435.01.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Mr. Tate. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, just a little informational item, just really quick, if I may. Oil shell's an odd duck for us. We know it's not coal, right? And we know it's not used for construction. So we put it under the house of hard rock. But just, over the years, there's been a number of people who have argued it really ought to be under the jurisdiction of the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, but it's not. We adopted it sometime way back when, and so hard rock is just kind of the default because the other two very definitely don't fit.
Next item, number 9, declaratory order, file number M-184-094. All those who wish to testify, would you stand? Promise to tell the truth? Yes. Thank you. The way we'll do this is we'll have the staff just give us a summary of the history, and we'll ask you to make your presentation, and then they'll make a presentation after you.
Good morning. I'm Barbara Correa, Financial Assurance Specialist representing the division.
Wally Erickson, also representing the division. We have a declaratory order today, and this declaratory order is regarding Sanborn Sand and Gravel, file number M-1984-094. It comes down to appropriate process for approving a transfer of permit. The controversy that we are here in front of the board today to resolve is whether or not staff can process a transfer of permit when the current permit holder is not available to authorize the transfer of that asset. So we look at the permit as an asset, and under the section of the statute and the corresponding board's rule, the statute being section 34-32-119 and the corresponding rule, the board's rule 1.12, that outline how we will transfer a permit. There is no explicit directive for staff that we have to have the authorization of the person who owns or holds the permit that they're transferring it. It's implicit there in the action rules. However, the rule does say that it will be completed on a board-approved form. And on the board's approved form, it's repeatedly asked that the existing permit holder authorize, acknowledge that, and participate in this transfer process. Here, we have a dissolved corporation who was the permit holder, and the corporate officer is dead. So we don't have an entity to sign for the transfer. The landowner wants to transfer the permit and is the daughter of the previous permit holder, but there's no legal connection there unless we hear from Jody today for that. So staff is not opposed to the petition. Staff is simply looking for direction from the board authorizing us to proceed with that transfer of permit. It is being contested. We have a complainant that brought this to our attention, and just wanted to give you a heads up that we do have a complaint from Iowa tracking this process.
Okay.
I have a chronology prepared. I have some additional documents if the board has questions. Hopefully we have the right documents here to disperse as we unfold this tangle.
Okay.
Can I ask what the nature of the complaint is?
Yes, sir. Stand by. The complaint was submitted by Robert Rinsig. Robert Rinsig lives in Iowa. He seems to be tracking the reality TV shows whereby various mining operations are on TV. And we get complaints from Mr. Rensig. This is not the first complaint we received against one of our operations that appeared on the reality TV show. So Mr. Rensig submitted a full complaint. I have it here if it pleases the board to review it. He brought this issue to our attention. Then on the back of that handout, we visited the Colorado Secretary of State's website just recently. And although Sanborn Sand and Gravel Incorporate is dissolved, Mr. Rensig has recently attempted to reserve the title Sanborn Sand and Gravel. Not real sure what that means, but he is not only submitted a complaint to us in February, but then in March, shortly thereafter, he filed with the Secretary of State to reserve that name. The permittee name, the historic permittee name, is Sanborn Sand and Gravel, Inc. And Mr. Rensig reserved Sanborn Sand and Gravel, a different entity.
What's your pleasure? Do you want to see the detail of the complaint?
Not really. But what was I'm still unclear what the complaint was, that it should be transferred?
It should, I believe Mr. Rensig is saying that over the course of quite some years, we've been receiving annual fees and reports and permit maintenance type documents from a corporation that is not the legal permittee. And so through this transfer of permit, the current landowner who wants the permit, who has been operating the permit, who has been maintaining the permit, but is not precisely technically the legal permit holder. And so Mr. Rensig is claiming perjury has been committed by the landowner operator representing themselves as the permit holder when they're not.
So is this an active operation now?
Yes, it is.
Okay, let's hear from the petitioner.
So my name's Jody Fitzpatrick, and I live in New Orleans, Louisiana. First of all, I want to thank Wally and Barbara because they've been amazing. They've spent so much time with me on the phone, and I really appreciate their help because this is obviously very new to me. Playfair Land Company was my father's company, and he died May of 2015, and so I inherited this company, the land, the LLC, along with my 4 siblings. And so for the past year and a half, I've been trying to clean it up, especially with the permits and the, excuse me, the reclamation bonds. So what we're asking for is, okay, Sanborn, to give you a little history, my father bought the property from William Sanborn and Sandy Sanborn back in 2002. And the original permit that came with 4 CDs was never transferred into his name. And we've attempted to change this over the past couple of years, but we can't get a signature from Sanborn. Like they said before, with Mr. Sanborn is deceased and Sandy Sanborn, we don't know where she is. So that has been a problem. We've been trying to clean this up even before this complaint. And it just seems like we hit that stumbling wall because we don't have anybody to sign for us. So that's why I'm here today, to try to fix it, to clean it. And there's probably a more sense of urgency because now we have this complaint.
You say when your dad bought the property, he got 4 CDs from Sanborn?
Correct. So
what happened to those CDs? Are those the CDs that the state's holding?
Correct. We still have the CDs. They're at the Bank of the West. they're ready to release them. We were able to prove that those CDs came with the sale of the land in our deed. So technically, my dad owns them. It was just the technicality of the name change. And I don't know why they were never changed. My dad, we were lucky enough to have him. He lived till 80 years old, but I can say the last decade of his life, he probably didn't have the wherewithal to manage the paperwork like it should have been. And so I'm grateful for the inheritance. However, it does come with a little bit of some challenges.
Whose name's on the CDs? These are just assigned to the state? I forget how that happens.
The name on the CDs is Sanborn Sand and Gravel. It's the Sanborn name, 4 of them. 4 out of that's about $30,000 worth of CDs. The other remaining 75 is under the correct name, under the Playfair name. But again, it still boils back down to that name, the name change. The Sanborn Sand and Gravel is technically the name of the permittee, but it needs to be Playfair Land and Company. Playfair Land Company, LLC. But we haven't been able to change it because we can't get a signature from the Sanborns.
Maybe this is a question for Barbara. The state, if there was a default and if there was a forfeiture, the state gets that money irregardless of whose name is on it. In effect, it's collateral for the state, right?
Correct. The CDs are in this, as Patrick mentioned, the CDs are with the Bank of the West, and the ownership on the CDs is under the PDPA program. So the title is Sanborn Sand and Gravel, assigned to the state of Colorado Division of Reclamation.
Okay.
So those would need to be changed if the permit,
Correct.
the name of the permit was changed, basically, right?
Yes.
Why would they have to be changed?
Because the Sanborn entity is dissolved. And so, as Mr. Fitzpatrick mentioned in their sale agreement, the CDs were to be transferred to Playfair when they did the purchase agreement for the land. The bonds were to come with the sale of the land. And that transaction completed, but all the paperwork was never processed thereafter.
But ultimately, the state doesn't care who owns them because the state still holds them as collateral, right?
Correct.
So I guess my question is, why would they necessarily have to be changed?
Right now, we're looking to change the permittee in the event that the permit would be fully reclaimed and released.
And there's money left.
Then there would be a challenge, which would be further down
Right.
the road for the bonds to be released. So we're trying to keep consistent names. We do allow third-party bonds, but in this case, there would not be the third-party signer for Sanborn if and when the permit is transferred, if the process is completed. So we would still have an incomplete form because the new bond form would not be able to be signed.
So does the legal counselor for the division have an opinion?
Jeff, here on behalf of the division, not necessarily a position. I haven't been involved in the details of this particular matter. With respect to your question on the bond, Barbara is correct. We like to remain consistent on names of permittees. And so if in this instance, the Playfair becomes the permittee, we want to change those bond documents. I'm not as clear on the details of the facts as far as who has the authority once the company is dissolved, the operator is deceased, who can sign on behalf of the company to finalize these documents. So I've reviewed what with the inheritance, if there's any kind of power of attorney or other legal duties that transferred to her individually, other heirs. But I mean, it's not an uncommon occurrence where operators are deceased or companies dissolved mid-course. It's just a unique process to try to square up those signatures to get this thing transferred.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess I understand that. My question was more that if we don't change the name on the permit, it doesn't affect the state's ability to collect on in the case of forfeiture.
With respect to forfeiture, I mean, again, you're going to have some inconsistencies of documentation. You've got a company that is no longer in existence, who's not operating the site. The names won't match up. That's what we like to ensure.
I understand that, but I guess my point is the way it's set up is that if there's a forfeiture, the state has the money to fix it. And I understand it'd be a real problem if there's money left over as to who get it, but effectively the state's protected for the way we have it set up. I think is what I'm trying to ask.
Right. To kind of continue down the hypothetical of potential enforcement action, you'd be bringing enforcement action against the permittee who is no longer an entity, revoking a bond for an entity that no longer exists. So there's some potential legal problems there. Where
We do that all the time. I mean, we did it today.
In this instance, we've got an existing person wanting to act as permittee who is presumably conducting work on site, maybe conducting the work that might lead to a possible violation. And so it'd be procedurally odd to bring a violation against Playfair Land Company and forfeit the bond for a company that is no longer in existence. Essentially, that's kind of the underlying purpose of these transfers of operations, is to square up the paperwork so that it accurately reflects what's going on in the field. That's really what we're after here. The hope is that we won't have to commence an enforcement action against anyone. We won't have to wrestle with these paperwork inconsistencies either before you in an administrative capacity or potentially in the court process.
How do we know for sure that all the shareholders of Playfair are interested in doing what we're being asked to do?
That, because I haven't been involved, I don't know the answer to that question. That's often part of what we look at in either looking at an executor of the state, are the remaining shareholders, through the Secretary of State, the dissolution process. She may have some answers on whether this was a business set up with just essentially a solo practitioner, whether there are other shareholders. I don't know the details of that. While
You're welcome to answer that question.
So it's my 5 siblings, and one sibling is here, Michael Pfister. The other 3 are they don't live here. So it's set up as an LLC. I'm the business manager, and I'm the executrix of the will. So we're on board. They're happy that I'm here, not them. Believe me. So, and again, it's just trying to just get the paperwork in order, because there's a potential we're trying to sell the land down the road. And when we sell, we'd like to be able to say, and here are all of our permits that go with the land, and they're clean. The Bank of the West is happy. The other concern with the Bank of the West is that the 4 CDs went dormant, and I had to send them a lot of paperwork to prove that I owned them, that we as a corporation owned them. So if the state ever had to tap into them, I think the biggest advantage would be to make sure that it's a clean paperwork. And that's where I hit my stumbling block. And that's why Barbara and Wally and Michael have been so helpful, is I want to get it done, but how do we do this? Because they kept coming back saying incomplete. And now I understand why, because we can't get a signature from the Sanborns.
And what mining activities going on?
Right now, we're doing some rock crushing and some gold. We're hoping to get started. We really kind of wanted to get this behind us first.
I don't understand. Are you?
Oh, yes, we're going to be doing some operations. We're setting up the plant for.
What?
Sounded like you, Tom.
Right, Mr. Chair, I can address the mining a little bit there. It's sand and gravel operation, part of, they've been doing gold. It's in a placer type location just outside Fairplay, in between Fairplay and Alma. So there are a lot of sand and gravel operators that mine gold as a secondary commodity, or they mine gold as a primary commodity, sand and gravel as a secondary commodity. And this is just one of those on the banks of the Platte.
Is the bond adequate?
Yes.
It better be.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm still wondering what we need to do with it. Is there, how can we as a board accomplish what needs to be done to satisfy apparently Bank of the West and you, and what authority, what direction, what can we do rather than continue to ask questions?
What they're asking us to do is to approve the cessation of operator form.
And we can legally do that.
Ask the lawyers. What John's asking is, is there any legal problem with us just changing this? Accepting this form when we don't have proof of ownership or whatever?
Sure.
Again, Jeff, you here on behalf of the division. As Wally outlined in his preliminary statements, I mean, it's really, this is part of the bond forms themselves. This is something that we require of all transfers of operations, is that the outgoing sign off on the incoming. There is no statutory or regulatory requirement that take place. It's inferred. It's something that the board historically has looked for to make sure that there wasn't some essentially a forcible takeover of a permit. And so I think that the board does have discretion in this particular instance under the declaratory order process to essentially make an exception of the form requirements based on the testimony today. If the board would like supplemental paperwork from the company, the incoming company, I believe that staff can provide that to the board, or the company can provide whatever is needed of the board. But yeah, as far as just a statutory, regulatory roadblock, I don't believe there are any. This is really just a kind of a application of the form requirements, and the board's forms arguably subject to your discretion.
I have a question. Is this not an issue of cloud on the title?
If I may respond, we typically don't get involved in title search, determinations of property rights as far as whether it's a cloud or some other issue with title. We're looking more just to make sure that everybody involved in the process is voluntarily involved and in agreement of the transfer. That's really the extent of the division's review of these forms.
Wouldn't this be easier to resolve if the petitioner went through the process of clearing that cloud on the title and then coming and saying, this is what we want from you? Or is that an extra step that you don't think is necessary?
It appears that some of that background work has already been completed, either through the division process, or it sounds like there's been a tremendous amount of work involved in clarifying who owns the deeds through the banks. Our process is separate. Usually it's just a recognition of a transfer of liability and existing obligations, not necessarily an ownership question of the board or staff.
But would the board's action be legal if it was challenged without a cloud on the title search?
Legal as far as just transferring corporate property? Is that the nature of the question?
Right, so yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I may. I think there are two things going on here. There's the property transfer. Playfair owns the property. They do own the property. Prior to that, their father bought the property and the permit and the bonds, lock, stock, and barrel. Those were transferred to him. He was the owner of that. What happened, I think, is that they became corporate officers of Sanborn Sand and Gravel. And at some point, all of that stock was transferred to your father, Mr. Pfister.
Correct.
And, but then somewhere down the road, the company was dissolved. And that's where we didn't have track of it. Then now he is deceased. He cannot sign on behalf of Sanborn Sand and Gravel. I think Ms. Fitzpatrick is the executor of the estate. I believe she can sign on his behalf. I mean, I think as the executor, she should be able to clear up his affairs. So the deed is in Playfair's name, if I'm not mistaken. So that's one thing. We're just talking about the permit right now. And it is a little bit messy. There's a dead trail with the permit, but it ended with Mr. Pfister owning the stock before dissolution of the corporation. And then they were continuing to submit reports and do all this other stuff. It never became a problem until his passing, and then they need to transfer this permit into the state, essentially.
One other question, didn't you relate to us that in your purchase contract, it said that these permits are gonna, these CDs are gonna be transferred to you? Didn't you relate that to us earlier?
Yes, sir. I actually have the deed with when my father bought the land and the CDs. This is the original purchase.
But the purchase contract said that was part of what was going to happen.
Correct.
In the execution of that contract. Isn't that correct? Those are going to be transferred.
No, not transferred, just well owned. In other words, we bought the 74, my dad bought the 74 acres along with, at the time, there were about $21,000 worth of CD bonds at Bank of the West. That was part of the purchase.
Along with the permit.
Along with the permit, correct. But it's just that technicality of the name change.
The permit's listed in the deed?
Excuse me?
Permit's listed in the deed?
The purchase agreement. It says the sales price includes transfer of the bond currently held by the corporation for purposes of reclamation, reference Colorado Division of Minerals and Geology, and the current amount of $21,614. And it came with, I have the actual copies of the CDs, those 4 CDs.
I'd like to see the complaint letter, just for my information.
I think the purchase contract withstands all. Typically, that's what happens.
I think we're getting a little off of the point of what we're supposed to be looking at, though. I mean,
What I'm trying to do is figure a rational way to do what we can do to clean this up. That's all I'm saying.
well, yeah, and I don't think we need to get concerned with the CDs and the transferring of the CDs and all of that. I think we're more concerned about just the name on the permit and getting that straightened out. And it really is our forms that require the original signature. And we have someone sitting in front of us that wants to take responsibility for that and become liable for anything that's going on under that permit. And so I see no issue in saying in this instance that we do not need the original signatory of the permittee to transfer the permit into the appropriate name. Tom, if you still, I'm not trying to stop you from looking at the complaint letter. I'm just trying to focus on what they're asking from us and what I think that we can take action on it.
Yes.
This is Wally Erickson with the division. I just wanted to clarify, staff is not requesting that the board approve the transfer of permit, rather authorize staff to proceed with standard process in the absence of the signature of the deceased permit holder. We're basically here out of an abundance of caution. And
What's the difference between us approving it and authorizing you to proceed?
well, if one of our critics comes forward later and complains, it didn't happen quietly. We were all together in it.
Any action taken by the division is appealable to the board. So we're asking if this seems like a reasonable way to move forward. We think it is. We do think there's a legal entity representing the deceased who can sign on behalf of that permit. But then if there is an appeal, that would be what may happen. Because any action, once we approve that transfer, we'll have 30 days to appeal it to the board. Any action we take is appealable. So that's why we just felt it was best to be, as well as it happens on this caution, be upfront about what's going on here, try and just get a little clarity to move forward. The SO has not yet been submitted, correct?
It is still incomplete.
Incomplete, okay.
Okay, so what I have in my packet's incomplete
We found the
because
existing,
it doesn't have a signature
Correct.
of the current permittee.
as well as it doesn't have structure agreements for all structures located within 200 feet of the permit.
Okay, I'm a little thick-headed, but I think what you're telling me is you just want authorization to proceed in case something hits the fan later.
I believe so. I just think we want to be clear about the fact that this is just a little bit of an odd duck and there could be a hiccup down the road, I suppose. I don't think there really is going to be a hiccup. I think somebody could potentially appeal our decision, I guess. Is how I would say.
So do you want a motion?
I have one.
Oh, do you want a motion?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Before you call for that, I want to comment on Tony's point about any decision of the board is appealable. That is a nice protected due process point for this body, that we're not making the decision to authorize the transfer. We're authorizing the division to proceed as normal. There'll be a period of time where anybody who wants to object can appeal to you, and then I think you'll have a nice layer of insulation there. Another point is, well, you mentioned, you suggested you have some additional materials to distribute. Did I mishear you on that?
If it pleases the board, I have papers to distribute. If there's questions specific, there was a comment about the complaint. I have the complaint currently in my hand and ready to distribute if that pleases the board.
I don't need to see it if what we're doing is authorizing the staff to proceed.
That's what we're asking.
That's helpful for me.
Okay. I move that we authorize the division to proceed with processing the transfer of the permit without signatory from the current permittee.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Karen, are you good?
Yes, I am.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Comment and then get a break.
Do we have public comment? We don't have any papers, do we?
No.
Okay, we'll take a break till 20 minutes till by that clock. 20 minutes till 11.
Okay. Cannot.
I know, right?
Well, yeah.
I know, exactly.
Anyway.
Well, I did. The thing is that
I know, see it's delayed on here. Oh, yeah. So. How many seconds is it delayed?
About
Okay. Do you have a motion on NO5 file P-1999-008?
I move that we accept staff recommendations.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Motion passed. Okay. I move that the board enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing with counsel disputes that are the subject of pending or imminent court action, discussing specific claims or grievances, receiving legal advice on specific legal questions, and discussing matters required to be kept confidential pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute, Section 24-6-402, Pren 3, Pren A, Pren Roman numeral 2, including Jason Euchre versus MLRB and the Division of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety, 2014 CV 546. Transit Mixed Concrete Company versus MLRB et al., 2017 CV 30217, and Pride of the West LLC et al. Versus MLRB, the Division of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety in Colorado Goldfields, 2017 CV 30268. Have a motion?
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
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 Anything else to come before the board? When are we going to do a change of chair?
3 or 4 more months.
It's time. It's past time.
There's one thing I need to let the board know. There is coming a change in organization of my section. And that change is going to affect a new attorney sitting in this chair for you in the coming months. I know what it's going to be. I'm planning on covering, representing you through the May meeting, probably beyond that, as a way to transition the new attorney to understand all it is that we do here in this room. But I want to let you know that as early as I knew, I just found out about the change within the last 3 weeks. So I don't know who the new attorney is going to be. It's going to be under a different supervisor. As you know, I supervise a number of attorneys, and just give you more specifics about the shift in structure. One of the major clients in my unit so it's represented by attorneys that I supervise is the Department of Agriculture. So we have a couple attorneys that's all they do is the Department of Agriculture work. They are adding a number of additional attorneys. And when we get to a certain number of attorneys on one client, that generally means they need to have their own unit. So when we hire new ag attorneys, that whole client will go to a new supervisor, a different person. And with that change, we're going to shift the Land Reclamation Board. I get to inherit the Board of Nursing, so I'm giving up a whole bunch of work to take on a whole bunch of different kind of work. But I want to let you know that we're probably looking at the change being effective sometime after the May meeting, but I'm committed to being here for at least another month, probably another couple, 2 or 3.
We'll miss you.
I'll miss the work. It's fun. I like working with everybody in the room, everybody in this building, everybody on the board. I've been doing this client. I've been representing this client now for my 8th year, so I feel like I'm finally up to speed on what a 110, 112, and 111 is, just in time to leave. So anyway.
Explain it to us.
I can't explain it. I just think I have it somewhere back here. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Can you tell us anything about a representative of the department for the board? The natural resource member of the board?
For when Bob's not here.
So what, I'm sorry.
Is anything going to happen? What's the plan here?
For,
To get somebody on this board representing the,
DNR.
representing the conservation.
no, the director
For
of
Bob.
the natural resources.
Oh, okay, so,
That's what I'm trying to say.
yeah.
DNR, that was what I was looking for.
Here's the thing. So Bob is still on the board. And, he recognizes that he's having this a lot of meetings. But because he's a voting board member, he can only, this is the way we're reading the statute, and Jeff looked into it, and it is gray. And we thought it'd be a simple question, ended up being a complicated question.
Right.
But the way that we're choosing to read the law is a conservative way, which is when you're a voting member, you can only delegate your seat to the deputy, not to the assistant. So the question was, could Julie Murphy fill in when Bob's not here? And the answer is no, because it's a voting seat. On other boards, like the Colorado Water Conservation Board, the assistant can fill in. But here we decided not because it is a voting seat. And so normally, the way I always work with Mike is he would just delegate to Bob. So normally Bob would then delegate to me. Obviously, I can't sit in both chairs. So we're just going to, Bob's just going to try and make it when he can. It's conceivable if there's, that's not even worth going there. Yeah, he'll just try and fill in where he can.
Okay. That answers the question.
Yeah.
What about the other seat? Is there
The conservation seat?
going to be a nomination or?
We
There's
have,
not anybody going to be confirmed this afternoon, is
no.
Aren't I staying on?
there?
Yeah,
Not,
there's-
not soil conservation, the conservation experience.
We hope so. We hope you're staying on, Karen. Yeah, so the other conservation seat, or sometimes we call it the environmental seat, we have, I believe, 4 applications in to fill that seat right now. And I think Bob will be making some recommendations to Romaine. And then Romaine will decide who she wants to be president. But they won't be confirmed in this session. They'll be
That
confirmed
was
in
the
next session.
question.
We can't move that fast with less than 2 weeks to go.
And then there'd be just another interim appointment or whatever it
That's
was that
correct.
Randy came up with.
That's correct.
Okay, any other questions, comments? We're adjourned.
So we have lunch. Jill, I was hoping to go over your talking points with you really quick.
Yeah.
Not yours, my talking points
Yeah.
about you.
Fair enough.
And Forrest too.
Okay.
We're just really quick. And then, I don't know, are you planning on Victor Hall and Martin coming back, or what are you guys planning on doing?